You're listening to From Heaven and Hope, a weekly podcast where Nicole Fraser brings you conversations from those who have been affected by grief. Whether a parent, child, friend, counselor, pastor, or philanthropist, everyone moves through and conquers grief in their own way. We know that what you're facing is a long road, but no matter how dark that road is, there will always be light. There will always be purpose. From where they are in heaven to the hope you need to move forward, we want to help you on that journey. Here is today's episode.
Hey, I have my favorite person on the podcast today. I have my husband, Neil, and we're chatting a bit about what life has been like through our many experiences with loss. We're sharing everything from the moments of fragility in our marriage, the ways in which we grieve and how it felt for one another, intimacy, therapy, friendships, and everything in between. So let's get on into it. Hey babe, how are you?
How's it going?
Okay. So we're going to talk about how grief affects our marriage when we've lost our kids over time, and then now how it plays into our marriage now. So when you think about your grief, babe, when we lost Brady and then Levi and then the miscarriages, how did it feel for you and how did you deal with it? What did you do or do you continue to do to sort of manage those feelings?
I think each loss you grieve differently. Brady, for one, because he was here, is a different grief than some of the other losses that we've had. Brady was one that, we had him, he was in our arms, we took him home, we did everything we could do as far as parents, and at some point before you even know what was going on, you sometimes feel like maybe you failed a little bit, and you really don't know what to do at the first start when you're just becoming parents. So you're everything you do, every action, every little motion that you had, you kind of questioned and looked into it, but you weren't sure what was going on. But then as that week moved on, we knew something was wrong, and then obviously everything happened. But then when it comes to the actual grief part of him passing, it hit differently because he was here. We held him, we had him. So I think grieving for Brady was tougher than some of the miscarriages and Levi, only because he was here. Levi, for him, was the most difficult thing because with our chances of having a healthy child, it was
in our favor to have a healthy child.
It was in our favor to have a healthy child, and then that took a spin and it didn't work either. So It ended up being like we took a chance. We were upset emotionally for me, yes. Physically for you, it's a bit different. But for me, emotionally, we were down that road and we thought everything was good and viable, and it really hurt when we found out that out of that percent chance we had, we didn't do it again, kind of thing, and we went down that road and we couldn't put another child through that. So the grief of that one was more emotional, I think.
Like the loss of an idea of what could have been.
Yeah, like it was there and then it was gone, and it was tough. It was tough because you thought for sure that was coming. It was going to be in our favor after everything we've been through, that this was going to happen and we were going to be good. Yeah,
like we paid our dues. Why would this happen again? Yeah, I think for me, Levi felt a bit more lonely because again, for me, I was the only one that kind of felt him physically. Everybody else, he was more of just like an idea of something that for you, but for everybody. Whereas with Brady, we had so much support with Brady because everybody knew about him and lots of people met him. And so I don't know that one was easier or not for me, but they were just two completely different experiences. I wonder with Levi too, do you think that with Levi, I remember being in the hospital and you coming in, you seemed more concerned about me as opposed to, I don't want to say as opposed to Levi, but more worried about how I was coping physically because I was in the hospital for those couple of days. And there was a night when you couldn't be there with me, that first night. Remember you bought me a book and a water bottle and then you had to stay across the street at a different place.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. I think that that was a bit difficult, but my concern for you was, going through what you went through to have Brady and how your body reacts a little differently, but then you had to go do this, which is a totally different thing, and physically it can really affect you as being the one carrying.
Yeah.
And how everything happens after the fact.
Yeah.
And emotionally, again, you're attached. You're attached to him, and my level of emotion for that was making sure that you were taken care of based off of what was going on.
Right, and I guess too, also like when we had Brady, when he was born, it was just a happy experience. We had no idea that his birth was going to end up being like tragic, but with Levi, it was like we went in knowing it was going to be tragic, and we also knew that I was a carrier of this disorder, so that's the whole reason I had to stay in the hospital. Whereas we didn't know that when we had Brady, so all these variables were kind of added on top of the emotion.
Right.
How do you feel like you manage your grief? Like, were you a doer? Like, I think you were more of like a doer, and I was more of like a rester. Like, you wanted to get out and kind of be with people. That was how you were healing, and I did not.
I had mine. I mean, the first couple of weeks there for us, we didn't really move from bed, so we didn't even come home. We were
right. We didn't even go back to the house.
At your
That's
mom's, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, at that point, we didn't leave the house, and then, we have to sort of take baby steps to get out. And I thought, as you started to do things like that, it sort of made me not move on, but it made me think, we have to keep going. If we don't stop, or if we stop moving, it's just going to be, we're just going to sit there and think, and I don't know if that's necessarily the way that you're supposed to grieve, but I don't think there's any real way to grieve.
Yeah, there's not.
But I thought going with friends and
yeah,
kind of being around people to talk about other things, kind of made things feel a bit normal again.
Like maybe there was also something to live for. There was still life after, even though it was bleak at that point. There was still goodness. Like even though we had lost kind of our whole world, there was still pieces of our life that were still really good. Like I remember after Brady passed away, he passed away in September, and you had baseball was in the you were in championships and you were in the finals, and like I didn't go to the first couple, like you missed a few games, but then decided to do the last few with your team, and I didn't want to go. And then the very last one, you had said, I hope you come to watch, and I did. And I remember like being really nervous about that, but then you guys won, and you weren't supposed to win that year, and that felt like it was a sign or something. And I don't know, I was really grateful that you pushed me to go, because it did make me feel better to just be outside and
the support,
feel connected to other people, and people that I think too, the baseball team that Neil's a part of is they're really tight. They're really, really close friends. And at that point, me on my end as like the wife that was the first year I had just started to become friends with them. So like we weren't super close, but we were close enough. And now we're very close, but it was almost better to have people around that weren't super close, because I found too, sometimes friends that are too close or family, you almost feel like you've let them down, like when you've lost something. Whereas if it's friends that are a little bit distant, I didn't feel like I owed them anything. I was just there, and they were just like the perfect people to be around in that moment. I don't know how you feel about that.
I mean, the support from friends and family was, tremendous, and as much as they don't understand, not to our extent maybe, but they do their damnedest to help out and be there for you. And I remember hundreds of messages coming in from people just, hey, if you need me, let me know. You want a coffee? Let's go for a coffee. You want, want to go for a drink? Go for a drink. Let's just get together and kind of
they
just
cleaned our house while your cousin cleaned our house. Like people, like just things like that were just really logistically needed.
Yeah, like family and friends are always there.
Yeah,
and
meals
that was
dropped off.
That was helpful. Getting back to baseball right afterwards was good too. Having like a team sport where you're all together, kind of
like physically supporting one another.
Puts in perspective that now you're playing something and all your teammates are there, and then the league actually was behind it too. The other team had a moment of silence before the game, which was very nice. Hard to hit after that when you're tears in your eyes from the support, but Yeah, it was the outpouring was unbelievable, and we couldn't thank anybody and everybody out there enough. But it's a different type of grief for each
loss.
Each loss. Going to like everything we've been through as far as IVF and all of that, and having three?
No, two
miscarriages.
Yeah.
2 miscarriages.
3 babies.
Yeah. And that's even tougher because now you think because we get pregnant and you think you can have a baby and then something happens and you're like, what happened? Like, I don't understand. We can do this, but now these things have happened, and then you kind of look at those and say, okay, I guess it wasn't our time. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. The miscarriages for me were really tough because, especially the first. Well, and I shouldn't say that. They were both really tough. But the first one I remember being really shocking. Like, I felt like we did IVF to take out the variable that had taken our previous 2 babies, right? Because we did genetic testing, and so I'm like, okay, we've taken out the variable that takes away our babies. Like, this will be okay. As soon as it works, it works. And then you forget that, like, that's also not the only variable. There's, like, hundreds of other variables that millions of women face, like, every day that are first trimester miscarriages, and you never know why. And that's just, like, so heartbreaking and so hard to wrap your head around.
I remember, it seemed like every time it happened, it was just out of the blue, and it was like, oh no, you got to be kidding me, and this can't keep happening to us. Like, we've got so many opportunities, and now it's like we're running out of opportunities, and that's the disheartening part too, is when you're coming to the point where you just don't know anymore, and where we're going forward with it. It was tough. It's all tough, and I guess emotionally it's tough on me. Emotionally and physically it's tough on you. And I think that's where some things differ, is how we grieve for each situation. And it's the unfortunate thing is it happens, and it's not a great thing, but the best thing we can do for each other is just try to be there for each other, and I know it's not the same, but as best as you possibly can, just be there for each other. And
how do you feel like we did support each other? Like, was there anything you remember doing?
It's hard to pinpoint, to be honest, but I think it was just we had to first understand that this was both of us. We're both going through it, and it's not one or the other. It's how you do it together. And I think at some points it was tough because you felt like you needed the time to grieve, but you needed to be there for your partner, and you couldn't have your time.
Right. It's weird, and too, when you're grieving differently, it's weird because it feels like at the same time you're trying to grieve, you're trying to kind of manage your marriage and make sure your marriage doesn't fall apart. But meanwhile, it's not that it's falling apart. It's just that you're just individually managing your feelings.
Yeah, and your feelings are just an emotional roller coaster. Like, it's one day you could be okay, the next day you could be just a disaster, and sometimes you make the stupid remark of, hey, you okay, what's going on? Like, and you think back in your head, well, why would you say that? Because you know what's going on. But you're kind of at a crossroads of what do you say? Like, it's one of these things that you kind of just almost don't say a thing. You just sit down and
just exist.
Just exist. Yeah, exist and be there for each other, and that's it. Without saying a word, you know what's going on. But and I think that's kind of where we've gone since Brady. When we know something's not right, we almost don't even say anything to each other. We just know. We know something's going on with you. I'm going to stay here and just kind of be with you because we know in the background there is this, and you have to. And
it's always there. I mean, it's sort of like the rawness of it lightens over time, but it's always there. It never goes away. You're right. Yeah.
Like, even to this day, like, it's.
Yeah, and you always have moments. There's always triggers, and there's always things that happen. But as long as you kind of are honoring those things yourself, but also for the other person, I think I agree. Yeah. I think that's all you can do. Yeah. Do you remember any time, like, consciously making a point to not let it tear us apart, or making any conscious decision not to let it tear us apart, or was it just natural?
No, I mean, you do, like, when you do look up things, and that's the worst thing to do is start looking at the internet when you ever have anything wrong. You hear how stuff like this just rips people apart, and it was one of those things that you look back and say, no, we didn't I didn't
give up.
I didn't think that was the road we were down. And, you kind of go into a marriage and say, for better, for worse. And we've had a lot of worse in the past 6 years. So it's kind of, you go through it together. And it's not one thing or the other. It's both of you are one kind of thing. So you just find the support and you try to keep everything going the same way it's always been. But I mean, yeah, there's obviously some times in there where it's really tough and emotionally and physically, and we've probably both gone through it, but it is really tough. It is something that you try not to put blame on anybody, even though sometimes it is there, but you don't ever do that because it's not real. It's
not real. It's just
not controllable. So you have to look at that as, we gotta look and be strong. Like we have been strong.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the blame it comes and goes, but it's just a coping mechanism. It's not real. Like nobody's to actually blame for anything that's happened. It's just that it is what happened, and so now we have to find a way to find a new normal and move forward. And yeah, I think for anybody listening that's struggling is just to know that it doesn't go away, but it does get less raw or something, and it's not at the forefront all the time. It's just always there in some capacity that you have to work through.
I mean, you run into things every day that might
trigger a memory or trigger an emotion or something.
I mean, we sit back and we talk about Christmas and his birthday and how old he'd be today, like turning 6 this year, going, holy cow, like this is our boy, and like what would he be like today, so it's a bit different to think of that, and sometimes I try to look at a positive side. I don't know if it's even positive, but I think it is positive, is when you look at Kyla being just turning 3, and then you think, oh man, what would they be like together? And then you think, well, maybe they wouldn't be like that because...
Or maybe we wouldn't have Kyla.
And it's like...
It's a hard thing to reconcile, for sure.
It's really hard to think about, and I wouldn't... At this point, I love her to death, and I don't know if I could even imagine
it's hard to
without
imagine,
her.
Yeah.
And so you try not even... I mean, we're talking about it now, but you go down the road, you can't even... It's hard to even think about something like that because your mind goes to different places, and you say, don't think about it because this is what's happened.
Yeah.
You're kind of... This is here. This is your...
Yeah.
This is what's going on in your life.
Been dealt.
Yeah. You kind of move on and say, this is this, and we are where we are, but these things will never, ever go away.
Yeah, no, they never go away. I agree. How do you think our marriage has evolved over the last 5 years? Do you think we've gotten better at anything? Even pre-Brady, but has his or Levi or the miscarriages helped us through anything, do you think?
The way we were, I don't think it's changed a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah.
There might be some things, if I could really dig down deep, but I mean, we've always been the same couple since before. I said the one thing that we've never done in the longest time was fight, and my God, we fought
when Kyla was born. We can talk about that.
We fought more than I could ever imagine. I mean, being together for 12 years, and then for the first 10 years not even really having a fight, and then all of a sudden having a fight after fight after fight, and it was like,
but when God, that happened after Kyla was born. That.
Yeah, but I remember a few before. I remember a few after Brady where it was just tensions were there, I think.
Maybe. I don't remember. Maybe I blocked it out.
Maybe. But I just remember a couple going and even saying to one of my buddies, saying, hey, I've never fought with Nick as much as I have, and it terrifies me because we've never been that couple to ever go down a road. Yeah. Even a small argument would turn into something that was just...
Like a blowout?
Not needed.
I feel like I've blocked this completely out of my memory. I do recall when Kyla was born, that fighting.
I know we had those. You can't forget those.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I think I know. I think that when... I've completely blocked those out, so I can't speak to that. But the ones when Kyla's born, I think that time was so crazy because we had gone through all of this. At that point, we had lost Brady, lost Levi, and had one miscarriage. And so she was my fourth pregnancy, essentially. And we had her, and we had gone through so much to get her, and it just felt like it should be bliss. Yeah. And then, of course, having a newborn is hard. And so it it wasn't bliss because it just can't be bliss. But I think both of us were putting so much pressure on ourselves and on each other to have it be like rainbows and sunshine because it's all we ever wanted. And then it wasn't, and that exploded into these insane arguments.
That
and
literally did not have to be.
No, and they were just about being disconnected.
Arguments.
Like we just like weren't talking to each other. Like that was the worst. And then I don't even know what happened. It just like it was like almost like a light switch. It just changed one day. I don't even know if there was like a conscious thing. It was
more
just time.
I think it's more just the fact that, you know, there is the scare obviously we had in the hospital with her when she was just born.
Yeah.
Whereas
That's
like,
stressful.
her ammonia levels are high, and we're like, there's no way possible this could happen.
That's true. Okay, we should talk about that so that that's not coming out of nowhere. So people it's like no context.
Okay.
So, after Kyla was born, she was like she was an IVF pregnancy. Her embryo was genetically tested, and it came out clear she does not have the disorder. But as a precaution, we decided that we would do a blood work on her, like in the hospital after she was born, just to ensure like no stone was left unturned. And females with the disorder are like have greater success. Like they can live through it. It just might mean some challenges down the road, but it's definitely not life-threatening. But we wanted to know. And so we were in the hospital, and getting her blood was a bit dramatic because she was really little and getting her veins and stuff. And so it took a long time. And so by extension, she was under stress when they were doing it. And they took her blood, and they came back and reported to us that her ammonia levels were higher than normal and that she may have the disorder, and our hearts just sunk. Yeah. And so what happened then is we delivered at our community hospital, but we were connected to McMaster Children's Hospital, who actually we'll be hearing from next week. And we have a geneticist there that came on the phone with us and just said, don't get scared. They don't know how to take the blood work properly. Like, bring her here tomorrow. And so sure enough, we brought her there tomorrow, and she ended up being totally fine. And we had the results within a few hours of being there. But yes, those like 48 hours after that news was very stressful.
Yeah. So I remember like, and now we're new parents again, and going through all of that, and just hoping that nothing would be wrong. Mm-hmm. That every time someone did something, it was just like so minor, but it was just like nitpicky, and here you go, and all of a sudden you turn into this bout, and you're like Tyson and Holyfield in the middle of our house, and it's like, what the heck's going on here? So
not literally, like verbally.
No, we weren't hitting each other. That's obviously.
I don't know.
Well, I think you would know if something happened like that.
Oh my gosh.
But it just ended up being something that, you know, we fought more than ever, and it just eventually you got to come to an agreement and go, okay, this is stupid. This is not
warranted.
Not warranted by any means, right? But you know, Kylie gave us a run for our money, so. And
she has actually. There's been a few times where we've had to take her to the hospital for some GI issues, which were equally as scary because we would be admitted to McMaster for a week at a time. She did that 3 times that we had to do that, and then we realized, there's actually something a little bit wrong, but totally easy to, monitor and fix and whatever. So it ended up being fine. But yes, I do recall those fights in the beginning. How do you, like, after, not so much after Kyla, because that's a little bit more straightforward, but after Brady and Levi, and then with the miscarriages, like, through all the grief, how do you feel like it affected, like, our physical love life, like, without sharing too much? But just because people, because I can say, so I think, like, after all those things, obviously, like, your body feels like it's just had a baby, so it's traumatic anyways, and then when you actually don't have the baby with you, it's just that much more traumatic. So physically for me, I think it was just a longer stretch, I guess. And then I think it's just, I don't know, I think it's just like listening to one another and just being kind. I don't really know if you have anything to add, but
I mean it's a tough scenario to go through, so I don't.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of like go back
to explain. It's hard to explain what those feelings were like.
Yeah.
Like now, so I don't have much of an answer for that.
Yeah, I feel like it's just it's hard to like feel romantic when you're just surviving, I guess, in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then,
for sure.
And then it's just as it comes, like it's fine, but it's just it to not put too much pressure on if you're in a marriage that's struggling in that while you're grieving. Like that part will come when the healing comes, but you
gotta get past, you gotta heal first.
Yeah, not worry about that part.
Yeah, heal first to a degree, and then you can sort of step in back into the right direction again. But it's tough, but we got through it.
Yeah, we got through it. Yeah. Did you ever feel like we ever wouldn't get through it? Was there ever a moment that you felt that way?
Yeah, I mean, the back of my head, there was always that, like, the fear of it, especially, even some of the fights we've had and whatnot. The thought of it was just like, this is never going to get better. We're just going to keep fighting. We're doing things differently, and because as parents, you grieve differently, as myself would be as a father, and you as a mother. You grieve differently to the extent, and sometimes. Yeah,
to every extent. Like,
you just don't know, right?
Yeah.
You go down those roads and you're like, okay, well, let's see how this day goes.
Yeah, one day at a time.
So you don't know, and there's always that scare, right? And it's always in your mind that maybe something is going to trigger it, and you kind of go down that road. But you kind of got to get past that, and try to find that safe zone again with your significant other, because if you don't, you will go down that road.
It would be easier to go down that road than
it's kind of, again, you read things,
and
you see people go through something that we've gone through, and they're like, nope, I'm out, see ya.
And
all of a sudden the marriage is over,
Yeah.
and they're done. Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's not necessarily how I wanted to go down the road, because I married you for a reason. So you don't just fall. I think it's hard just to say you fall out of love because of.
No, I think it's about
something
pain.
like this, and well, sure, pain's one thing to it, but if I look at you and say, you know what, this happened to us, I want nothing to do with you anymore.
Yeah.
Then I walk out the door, and then what?
Yeah, then you're both alone.
Love you.
Yeah, and you're both alone dealing with it.
But that's the case, and some people go, I'm out of here. And again, they might be down that road. Maybe they don't.
Maybe they're not. But maybe so in that essence, I think on those days, that's when our friends really stepped up, because they, not that they replaced that, but when you needed an outlet that wasn't me, and when I needed an outlet that wasn't you, like, we heavily relied on our friends to not really, I mean, I don't know about what you talked about with your friends, but I know I wouldn't really talk about you. It was just to talk about something else. It was just to be around them and feel like no guilt, no attachment to sort of any circumstance, but just being normal a little bit.
Well, sometimes the conversations were good to have, because even though you're going through it personally, they're there to listen to you. So even if you go through in the first 15 minutes of you guys sitting down, maybe there's 2 or 3 or just one-on-one, but even if the first 15 minutes are just like, you kind of go down that road and talk about it, then you think about, okay, let's just talk about something else, and go past that, because what they're trying to do is just get whatever's off your chest to make you feel more relaxed, and try to help you that way. And that's a lot of times, I'm a talker. I express my feelings more than probably maybe you do. Yeah. But I talk to people, and that's how I try to get it off my chest a bit more. If it's something that maybe I want to talk to them about, not necessarily right to you first, but just to kind of get off my chest and see if I'm crazy or not. But
I also too, I think it, like, once you get it off your chest, like, do you need to say it again to your spouse, or is it done now that it's kind of out of your mouth? Is it good, or do you need to say it do you need to say something? And if you do, then go for it. Or they can give you guidance on,
or if you say it and they're like, nah, maybe you shouldn't say that. And then you're like, oh, okay, maybe I probably shouldn't say it, so I won't, and we'll leave that alone.
Okay. I mean, that's good advice. What do you think? Any of our friends did they do anything, say anything that was particularly helpful in those early days?
I mean, yes, of course. Our friends, as much as they say we're there for you, whatever, I mean, not enough. That being said is enough for us to sit back and say, for me at least, was, they're there. They don't need to say it 100 times to you, but they're there, and they've said stuff, and you appreciate it. But yeah, it does make you feel like you do have an outlet, if you have to have it or if you need to have it.
Yeah.
that they are going to be there and they'll put time aside for you.
Yeah, it was like drop of a hat.
Yeah, and that's
all the circumstances.
And that's, I mean, it's great. You don't want to put them out, but they've offered it to you, and you know, if you take them up on it, it's not a bad thing, and sometimes it is helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, they don't know everything that we've gone through. They don't know personally.
No, but they've been helpful.
But we have a lot of closer friends that went, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you this. You do what you want to do with it, but
yeah,
you know, we're here for you.
Yeah.
You do what you want.
So. I think our friends, like a lot of our friends, obviously there was a couple that weren't helpful, but but most of them, we were very lucky. Most of them were very helpful and very supportive and very available. But I think one, I'm not going to say this without crying, but one of the things was the check. Do you remember? Do you want to talk about that? When one of our friends invited us out for lunch.
Right.
And this was, I don't know, maybe like a month after. So a month after the passing. So probably about 2 weeks, maybe just 2.5 to 3 weeks after Brady's funeral. And we went out for lunch with our friend. And then when we got back to the house, he dropped us off. I believe he drove us. Did he? Or did we meet him there? It doesn't really matter. Anyways, we got back to the house and like went to the front door, and there was like something slipped in the door. And it was just like a note. Do you want to take it away before I lose my mind?
No, you're doing well. Keep going.
So there was a note in our front door wrapped up, and it just basically said that our friends were
thinking of us,
loved us,
and
wanted to help.
Yeah, they love you. We want to help you, and here's, I can't remember how much money it was, to be honest.
Yeah, it was like a money order for I don't know, a few $1,000.
Funeral costs and it was something we were just blown away, and
it was anonymous. Like nobody told us who it was. Like we
I know who the person is who set it up.
Yeah, we know the person that
we
took us out.
We don't know who actually
was
until
involved.
This day we actually don't know who was involved in it, and so we can't even say thank you. But I mean, we do thank you. It was huge. It was generous and like practical, completely practical. Like it took, I don't know, like a third of the funeral costs like off our shoulders. Yeah. You know, and we were able to just like deliver that check, like that money order, like right to we had the funeral home on it, and we just like took it right there and gave it to them, and then that took that off our funeral costs. It was amazing. Yeah, that was a super practical, super helpful, but also just like really, really thoughtful, like very thoughtful
and unifying. Like it was obvious based on the amount of money that it wasn't like two people, like, right? It was obviously like a group of quite a few people, probably people from different like crossover groups that don't typically connect, but found a way to do that so that we could, have this. It was great.
Yeah. So if any of you guys are listening,
thank
you very much.
I think that's the first time I've cried on this.
I know we probably can't say anything to you about it because we don't know who it is, but we really, really appreciated it at the time, and we still do to this day, and we thank you for that.
Yeah. And what about like after? So obviously we have great friends, but we did go to counseling. We did go to grief therapy for a little while after Brady, and then I continued to go a little bit by myself after, and then also do now with someone else. But did you find that helpful, or did you find that?
I feel like the talking part, just in a different, like a third party that didn't know us from anybody, was a bit helpful to kind of just get some things off your chest. Yeah. I thought for the amount of time we did it was good. I know you still do it now. I stopped doing it, but I don't know, I feel like sometimes I just want to do it myself. Yeah. And each their own. And have my own moments to myself, and that's kind of,
I think that's also too like speaks
the way
to
I
like,
look at it.
Yeah, I think that also too just speaks to like how we grieve differently, right? Yeah. Like you're like a doer, like it makes you feel better to go do things. So that's going to be how you kind of manage stress and feelings. And I just want to like sit and like talk it out to somebody, like get them to tell me I'm not crazy, or that I'm honoring my feelings, and give me some advice, because sometimes I'm pretty good with advice, but sometimes I don't exactly know how to articulate my own feelings. So I find that helpful for me. But yeah, I agree. I think that the counseling and the being together was helpful because it was just unifying for us. It was just like something we could do together because we were experiencing the feelings.
But it may have also brought out things that we didn't know each other was thinking, because maybe we didn't go down that road with certain questions that we were asked. So at the same time, you hear the question, and then you give your answer, and you kind of look at each other and you're like, I never would have thought that if she didn't ask that question. So okay, makes sense. And you kind of you kind of put yourself in the other person's shoes just so you understand their level of how they're taking care of themselves and how they're grieving compared to what you're doing, and vice versa, right? So it's kind of helpful both ways.
Yeah, for sure. Did you feel like you had any like resources or what did you kind of reach to for guidance? Like, you didn't read a ton of books or anything like that?
I didn't
You just
read a ton
looked
of
at
books.
people. Yeah.
I didn't go on the internet looking for anything. I think everybody has the way they want to cope with grief and how they want to have a strategy around that, and I think you need to find that yourself. And mine was, as much as maybe books may have helped, that book may not speak to how I actually feel, and
or maybe too overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think I needed to do it on my own, and if I needed something, I reach out to a friend or a family member, or just to try to make sense of it all. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't, books and stuff. I mean, not my thing anyway. Let's be honest. But when it comes down to it,
more of a video game coper.
Gets my mind off of things. But no, it's doing things like I find that, go outside, cut the grass, or do something else that helps me cope, and sometimes books just
aren't an escape for you.
Aren't an escape, yeah.
That's good. I think that's all I got. Do you have anything else to say? Do you have anything else you want to say? Words of encouragement? Anything you got?
No, you know what? You have to, each couple or each person doing the grieving has to find a way to do it their own way. No one can tell you how to grieve. No one can tell you when you should move on. No one can tell you how you should feel. You have to be able to be comfortable with what you're doing for yourself. You can't let anybody else tell you how to grieve and when you should be over whatever happened to you, because
there's no expiry date.
To this date, to this day right now, I still think about Brady. I still think about Levi. I still think about
what could have
been, and that's always going to be with me. I know. I did speak to somebody actually before Christmas. I spoke to somebody, and he lost his son about 23 or 24 years ago. And that's why he does what he does now and talks to people. Because.
And did you have any good takeaways from him?
Basically what I just said. Everybody grieves differently.
Honor your own feelings.
You have to be able to do and honor yourself and your own feelings and grieve your own way and cope. But you never ever are going to lose what you had. It's always going to be in your mind. You're never going to forget it, and that's kind of how it is now for me. We just we're never going to forget it. So, but we find a way to cope and hope for the best as we move forward.
I think I know I said that was the last question, but I'm going to ask one more. Do you think that we did the tournaments, do you think that the fundraising and giving back, do you think that helps with coping as well?
100%.
Yeah, I agree.
100%. It sucks that we can't do it last year. We took a year off.
Yeah.
And then.
But we did a MAC fundraiser that year.
We did a MAC fundraiser that year. Then we met a lovely couple, and we tried to do something together with them. And then obviously this wonderful pandemic decided to hit and mess around our plans. So we were trying to get back to do it again, because it is something that I thought, one, was a great day. You see how many people come out. I mean, we had 144 golfers
plus dinner
that last year, plus all the people for dinner. We filled the court, and it was $65,000 or something over 3 years we raised, or something.
61 something.
And it all went back to MAC, and it made us feel good that we were trying to give back to somebody else that may be able to save their child, that we didn't have that luck. So. Again, it goes back to the support of friends and family, and even people that maybe not know us, but they want to be there to support MAC. And that day itself, I mean, we've had good luck all 3 years we did it, and it was just awesome to see everybody out there and go and support something that we feel so grateful that we've had MAC as part of our life. And
MAC is McMaster Children's Hospital. That's what we mean when we say that. And I think too the tournament for me was like twofold. One, it was like something even when we were kind of on different pages as far as grieving, it was something we could kind of unite and do together because it was like one common focus. As well, like it was nice, the speakers that we had to come, right? Like the first year we did it, we had Dr. Kuzanko, which is the geneticist that worked on Brady's case and has worked with us since, who's just like the most wonderful human being on the planet. And then the next year we had another family come with a daughter who has a similar disorder, not the same, but a similar the way ammonia protein develops in her body and builds to ammonia, like she has a similar kind of disorder. And so they talked about that and what that means for her family. And then the next year we had Parker, who was the representative from the foundation that we worked with, who has now gone, sad, to work somewhere else. But he came and spoke about the foundation the third year. So those were really special too, in ways to kind of bring the tournament back from, just because it really was just like a fun day, but then those moments when those people spoke, it kind of brought it back to the core and what it was about.
And why we were there and what we were doing.
Yeah. And it was just, it would be, 15 minutes of speaking, 20 minutes of speaking, and then everybody kind of went back to their things, but it was just this moment to kind of ground everybody and remember we're not just there to kind of drink beer and like run around on the golf course. Like it was, which was a lot of the day.
Which was great because the more you drank, the more you spent, and that all went to max. So
exactly,
it was fantastic.
Exactly. We definitely encourage it. So that's kind of how I feel about the tournament, but I think you agree, right? And also when you take the check there, like their name, like Brady's name is on the wall there, and it's on every Hamilton hospital now that we've reached a certain donation amount. Yeah.
And it's really nice to see that there.
Yeah.
Not that we have to go back there right now, but it's...
No, but it's nice to be memorialized.
It's nice to be memorialized for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's it. Thanks, babe.
Wonderful.
I'm glad you didn't give up on us. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
So there you have it. I hope this episode gave you some insight into our marriage and what we have dealt with over time. I hope it encourages you if you are struggling in your marriage following a loss. And if you know us personally, I also hope this gave you some insight into maybe how you've helped us along the way. Thank you to everybody who did. We'll see you next week.